Perfect, thank you. So this week, it's week 3. Welcome back from your long weekend. We're going into community mapping because we didn't have a Tuesday session this week. We're gonna go through just very briefly the theme section of this week, which is community mapping, and then we'll go to our data team with Mariam and the guest speaker, Sam, from SDGs today. So regardless of which session it is, the kind of food for thought this week is this. So human rights philosophy insists every human has political, civil, economic, social, and cultural rights. Which right is a weakness you see in your most immediate community, and are there efforts to improve the current situation? So if you remember, our course topics are shaped around the age of sustainable development written by Professor Jeffrey Sachs. So based on the different chapters there, we're pulling different topics, different just considerations for you to have in mind as we continue these discussions each week. So just have that in the back of your mind as we talk about community mapping and as you think about further developing your projects. So let me just start with like a quick, icebreaker question. So why do you think we use maps? Like why map? Right? And just imagine yourself going on a hike. I know paper maps, physical maps are being used less and less now that we have our phones. But what are some reasons of why you map, why you use a map? So you can unmute yourself and share, or you can put them in the chat as well. To express, can you elaborate a little bit? Baswar, if you don't mind. And then while Baswar is further explaining, others can also write in or unmute yourself to share why you use a map. Great. Okay, so Vidya, it is a reliable method to find a certain place or to keep track of a certain thing. That's great. So awareness, right? To guide us through a path from beginning to the end. Perfect. Exactly. To follow through. Maps help visualize the locations of regions so one can connect ideas and things together. I love that. These are great responses. Yes. Yes to all of the above. So before we delve deeper into why do we map, so I just wanted to share just a little quick personal story. So my first job out of college was in a new country with the Peace Corps doing a community education work and youth development work. And one of the very first things they asked me to do as part of the job was to just go around and walk around your community, right? I do want to interject and just say some more responses because I think it brings everything together. So we have another response. We use a map to make it easy for us to track our way and find our required location and our way back easily. That's great. That's great. So I thought it was interesting that was the very first thing I had to do for my job was to just go out in my community and walk around and notice what is around me, right? So it's more specifically to our community mapping concept, you in your responses, you guys have all touched on this in different ways, but it is really to understand your surroundings, right? You understand your community assets, your community resources and needs, and get to know your community better. What are the unique needs, maybe the different perspectives, and especially for the scope of our project where you're thinking of different projects, different solutions for your community, you can't really do that unless you know the landscape, right? Both landscape, figurative and literally. So this is just a suggestion exercise for this week. And I know some of you, I think all of you are at different stages of knowing what you want to focus on for your project topics this summer. But I would encourage you, especially if you're kind of on the fence, we're not sure about what to do for your topic, I would encourage you to just take a walk around your community. And once you go with kind of that intentionality, I think what you see can also differ, and what you pick up might also differ, right? So later on in the slides, there are some guiding questions also for you. But this is to just help you to, you can start from your home, and then you can mark your spots on a physical map on your phone, or even just taking mental notes, right? Of different public gathering spaces. Are there any issues that you see, and more specifically related to your SDG focus area of choice? So if your focus is on health, or if you want to focus on education needs or education issues in your town, or environmental issues, take another look at them with more intention and observe. See if there's something you like or dislike. And then further, you can also see, okay, what are some of the services or resources that are available at the community level to address these? Or even if there is an institution or an organization, where are some gathering places where some of these things can be brought up for discussion, for people to connect. And then as you further develop your project, you can even think about what are the main industries or jobs and availability of community members, because we're not really expecting you to come up with a solution, everything just on your own. I think, collective action is very powerful. So, relying on our community members, our community resources is going to be really helpful as you think about your solution. And then the last question, what kinds of places or activities do people feel are missing from the community related to your SDG focus area of your choice, so that you could further tailor your ideas. So we've gone over these questions, but here's a list form, and we'll make these available for you after today's session in Google Classroom. But think about, these following questions. Again, this is really just to help you kind of step by step think about your solutions, not just as like a conceptual solution, but if you have the time and resources to really implement your solution, how would you go about doing that in your community, right? And in order to do that, you need to have a very clear understanding of the physical space, about the community members, what are the issues. And so this presentation is very short. We've shortened it so we can get through a lot more content today. So think about those things. Again, we'll make these available to you. And then before I hand it over to Mariam, we did want to give you a quick reminder of two events that are coming up. They're both next week. One is with the Center for Sustainable Development and Mission 4.7, our network, Beyond Green Jobs, creating a just transition through global citizenship education. So I know climate justice, inclusivity, global citizenship is an interest for many of you. So this can be very of interest to you. And our team member, Tim, is going to be one of the panelists. So it'll be great to connect with Tim also over the session. So that's July 12th. Can I ask one of maybe Radhika or Tim to send the link, since this is in the chat box to register? And then the other event is on the 11th of July, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. EST, data-driven voluntary national and local reviews for the SDGs. So again, very in line with the scope of our discussion this summer, data-driven solutions, and you can register. There's a little link here. So please do check those out. Okay, so I will stop there and I will hand it over to Mari.
Thank you, Han, and hi, everyone. Let me just find my slides. And so we're going to start the data and tech session. And we're really excited to have a wonderful colleague from the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team join us and share a little bit about what they do, how they use maps, and how they collect data as well. So, Han, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I think that really set the scene for some of the discussions that we'll be having next. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Sam for his presentation. And then just to let everyone know, after that, we'll have an opportunity for the breakout groups for discussion. And then when we regroup, I'll share an example of how we're using OpenStreetMap data for some of our work as well. So Sam, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to introduce you all to OpenStreetMap. And through that, I'm hoping to talk a bit about how OpenStreetMap can be used in humanitarian work as well. So I'm hoping you're going to get a good understanding in the next 20 minutes of OpenStreetMap, its data, and the community underpinning OpenStreetMap. I'm hoping that you'll learn how OpenStreetMap can be used in decision-making. And I'll take you quickly through some tools which are available for making contributions pretty easily, actually, to OpenStreetMap. And then finally, I'm hoping, as mentioned, to give you a sense of how OpenStreetMap can be used in the humanitarian and development context. So this is the OpenStreetMap website. This is quite easy to visit this page. Actually, I'll post a link to the OpenStreetMap map in the Zoom chat here. When you visit OpenStreetMap, there's no need to log in. I recommend you just zoom in maybe to somewhere you're familiar with, maybe somewhere that you live or that you grew up. And as you zoom in, you'll notice it looks like lots of other slippy web maps that are available, like Google Maps or Apple Maps. But as you zoom in, just look out for things that might be missing. There's probably some things that are missing in your neighborhood or the area that you're looking at. Now, the beauty of OpenStreetMap is that if those things are missing, you can add them really easily. So what you're seeing there is called a base map, which records the visible physical elements of our environment. It also has administrative boundaries and names, so country names or district names. OpenStreetMap, because it's a base map, it's not a map of intangible things. So things like social dynamics or demographics, it doesn't really capture those things. It doesn't visualize those things. But that's not to say that OpenStreetMap can't be paired with other data sources to do those sorts of things. Now, a good way of understanding OpenStreetMap is to understand it as the Wikipedia of maps. Okay, which means that anyone can contribute to OpenStreetMap and anyone can see OpenStreetMap for free, and they can also access all of the data on OpenStreetMap for free. And when I say access, that really means accessing the data. You might say, oh, you can look at Google Maps for free, and you can look at Google Maps, but you can't actually retrieve Google Maps data. For example, you can't pull the full network of roads from Google and run your own analysis using it, whereas you can do that type of thing using OpenStreetMap. Now, the kind of slippy web map that you're seeing here is just one way of visualizing OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap is actually best described as a database. Okay, it contains a lot of information, and actually you're only seeing some of the information on the front end and the website you're seeing here. There's lots of other things it picks up that aren't visible here. For example, power networks. It also picks up like oil infrastructure, telecoms networks. These things are mapped by people. They're just not necessarily represented on this public-facing map. But all of that stuff is accessible. All that you need in order to contribute to OpenStreetMap is an internet connection and an email address. Okay, and you need to be at least 13 years old, and those are the requirements, and then you can contribute. OpenStreetMap is being continually created and maintained by up to 10 million users now across every country in the world. Every day they are contributing about 4 million changes, map changes. And the full database, if you were to download the whole of OpenStreetMap and store it on a hard drive, it's about 1.5 terabytes, 1,500 gigabytes. Okay. Now, why did it come about? What's the origin? Well, in 2004, a student based in London was really frustrated with the lack of availability of free-to-use map data. And so that student created OpenStreetMap. And when it was first created, just very small patches of the world were mapped by mapping enthusiasts. But over time, more and more people have contributed to OpenStreetMap. And now it's effectively become a map of the world. And you can see here on the right-hand side, a timeline. It's actually quite outdated, that shows OpenStreetMap development across the whole of the African continent, with a few years in that timeline. And you can see the road networks expanding as they're mapped, and also lots of the cities expanding as buildings are mapped as well. OpenStreetMap includes data about roads, buildings, addresses, shops, land use, natural features like farmland and forestry, and a lot more. It's got an extremely lean governance structure, which means it's run in an extremely lean way. Very little funding goes directly into OpenStreetMap in order to maintain it. It's governed by the OpenStreetMap Foundation, which is a board comprised entirely of volunteers. And there's, I think, 2 part-time roles. One of them is involved in maintaining the servers which run OpenStreetMap, and another person is involved in administrative duties for OpenStreetMap. As mentioned, OpenStreetMap data is free and open, and unlike other crowdsourced mapping projects, it's quite unique in that sense. Now, although OpenStreetMap data is published under an open license, the license does ask that anyone that uses or accesses OpenStreetMap data follows the following standards. The first is that if you use OpenStreetMap data, you must attribute OpenStreetMap, which means you must say, if you are using OpenStreetMap data, that you are using OpenStreetMap data. There has to be a little footer saying uses OpenStreetMap data. You must share alike, which means that if you take OpenStreetMap data and you adapt the data, you must also offer that adapted data under the same license. So you must also offer that adapted data for free. And you must also keep the data that you use open. Okay. Now, why would you use OpenStreetMap data? Well, OpenStreetMap data, because anyone can contribute to it, does emphasize local knowledge and does empower people across the globe to edit. And there are many ways to contribute to OpenStreetMap in low or no tech contexts. Okay. OpenStreetMap also has no data releases. It's being constantly updated by the community of contributors. And when someone contributes to OpenStreetMap, it appears immediately. Okay. Now, why does open data really matter when it comes to spatial data? This is a view of Google Maps in an area, in an informal settlement, a densely populated area in Nairobi, Kenya. The settlement's called Kibera. And you can see on Google Maps, actually, there's quite a lot of data here. A lot of the buildings are mapped. We can see how densely they are packed together. We can see some roads and tracks running through this region. Okay, we've got parks mapped and so on. But just note the points of interest here, which are mapped and given visual prominence. Okay. So we're saying bikes, auto parts, a butchery, okay, barbershops. Okay. Now let's jump to the same view on OpenStreetMap. So this is exactly the same location, but now showing OpenStreetMap. Look closely here and notice the difference in terms of social, community, cultural points of interest that are mapped and given prominence. So here we have many more health sites mapped. We've got water access points. Okay, we've got religious sites. So the idea with OpenStreetMap is that it's not a commercial incentive which is pushing what is prioritized and what is mapped on OpenStreetMap. It's the community that decides what is mapped on OpenStreetMap. And the local community really has the biggest say in what is mapped on OpenStreetMap because they know their neighborhood. And there is nothing stronger when it comes to a mapper than someone who lives in the area and knows their neighborhood. Okay. So I've been talking about OpenStreetMap community. What does that really mean? Well, OpenStreetMap is a global community of volunteers and contributors. But you could also understand OpenStreetMap as a community of sub-communities, a community of smaller communities, if you like. Now, there are OpenStreetMap communities split by region. For example, there's OpenStreetMap communities related to particular cities, countries and regions. So for example, there's OpenStreetMap Africa for the whole continent. There's OpenStreetMap Brazil, okay, common interest of Brazilian contributors to OpenStreetMap. There's OpenStreetMap Philippines. There's actually loads of OpenStreetMap communities based on geography, and this kind of map here on the right, maybe I'll share the link to this, shows you how those communities are split geographically. It looks like a kind of smash pane of glass. But if you're interested in getting in touch with your local community, click on one of those shards of glass and it'll show you the contact details for that community. You can get involved. But there's also thematic communities for OpenStreetMap. So there's communities centered around particular themes or areas of interest, which aren't necessarily related to geography. So for example, the Youth Mappers group is a group of OpenStreetMap contributors participating particularly from universities across the world. The Missing Maps Project is a group of non-profit organizations which have a common interest in improving OpenStreetMap for humanitarian use. And there's various other thematic groups like that which have an interest in OpenStreetMap. Okay, so you may find that one of those groups is of interest to you as well. Now, who else contributes to OpenStreetMap? Going down another level. Well, there's people who contribute by editing the map, right? They might see something's missing and they add something to the map. And those might be commuters who use bike routes and notice that the bike routes aren't up to date on OpenStreetMap. Those might be college students, people who are part of their local parish. But also, there's lots of people who contribute to OpenStreetMap in other ways. Okay, some people are purely developing code for OpenStreetMap and building and maintaining the tools that surround the ecosystem of OpenStreetMap. Okay. Some people don't necessarily generate OpenStreetMap data, or they maybe do that a little bit, but most of their interest is in using OpenStreetMap data. Okay, I'll talk a bit more about that a bit later on. Now, if you're editing OpenStreetMap, if you're adding data to OpenStreetMap, there's two kind of main ways of doing that. And the first way is what's called remote mapping. And this is the way that it's kind of, I would say, easiest to engage with, and also has almost the widest reach. because remote mapping can be done anywhere as long as you have an internet connection and you've got a screen, okay? Because what you do with remote mapping is you look carefully at satellite imagery and you trace or draw over objects that you see in the satellite imagery. So for example, if you see a building, you're carefully tracing that building and you're adding the data using open satellite imagery, okay? Now, the more involved next step often is then to take that kind of basic data and add color to it. So for example, if you drew a building, what was the actual function of that building? Was it a shop? Was it a house? Was it a barn? Was it a hospital? You can't know that information often unless you have someone who either lives there or visits that area to check that thing out on the ground. And that's what's called field mapping, crucial part of the whole process as well. Okay, and this can be done using very low-tech methods, using paper-based collection methods, but it can also be done using a variety of mobile phone apps, including apps like Street Complete, which is one I would recommend downloading and using. It's very user-friendly, and many others. Now let's talk about how OpenStreetMap data is used. So let's first talk about the commercial use of OpenStreetMap. Okay, because some of these brand names here might ring some bells. Some of the commercial organizations that do use OpenStreetMap data include Strava, fitness app, Snap, Meta, so Facebook Marketplace uses OpenStreetMap data, Grab, which is a ride-hailing app popular in Southeast Asia, and many other commercial entities do use OpenStreetMap data. But OpenStreetMap data is also used in a very diverse range of use cases, including for advocacy, for journalism. It's used, for example, by the New York Times, gaming. Pokemon Go uses OpenStreetMap, Space Map. Films. There are lots of films that credit OpenStreetMap at the end of the film. Recently, well, no, quite recently, Blade Runner was a film that credits OpenStreetMap. Academia, it's often used in academic circles, governance, and I guess importantly for today as well, monitoring the SDGs. And it's also used in humanitarian contexts. And this is the part I'm most interested in because the organization I work for, called Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team, has an explicit focus, particularly on OpenStreetMap use for humanitarian purposes. So it's used by large humanitarian organizations, including MSF, Red Cross societies, UN bodies, many organizations, and they're using it for operational decisions, like planning and logistics. They're also using it to influence decisions in advocacy. So it's widely used among humanitarian organizations in that sector. Okay. It's also used not only in response to a disaster, but in anticipatory action. So in anticipation of a disaster for maybe early warning systems or other systems like that to plan ahead of time. Now, just one use case I'll pick out is fairly recent from Turkey Syria earthquake response. A local organization in Turkey called Yersizenler pushed about 9,000 volunteers to improve OpenStreetMap data across the affected regions of Turkey and Syria in response to the massive earthquake which occurred earlier this year, because there was a lack of spatial data in that region. Okay. And a large number of organizations, at least 10 different organizations, use the OpenStreetMap data which was generated in their response activities, including for search and rescue coordination. Okay. Now, as with any crowdsourced initiative, there are questions about the quality of the data which is produced through OpenStreetMap. Now, I would say a couple of things here to kind of allay your fears about this slightly. So firstly, a large number of academic studies have focused on OpenStreetMap data quality, and they have found that OpenStreetMap is often as good or better than commercial map data. And I would say the increased government and commercial use of OpenStreetMap is testament to that. OpenStreetMap data, when it's produced by someone, retains detailed information about who created that new object, when it was created, and any changes that are made to that object. This is called metadata. So it's possible to see exactly who mapped an object and when edits were made to an object and what exact edits were made. Okay, this encourages accountability from contributors, okay, because otherwise people chase up on bad edits. I would say only a very small, under 1% of contributors, under 0.1%, I would say, of contributors are putting inaccurate data into OpenStreetMap maliciously or accidentally. And the other remaining huge proportion of people who contribute to OpenStreetMap are there to check that contribution, fix it, or get rid of it. Okay, in other words, the vast majority of good intention contributors correct for the bad contributors. Now, how can you contribute to OpenStreetMap? Well, it's there are a bunch of kind of self-paced courses you can follow in order to learn how to contribute. I'll drop one into the chat here. Let's drop both these links. I would say one of the ways to kind of do a coordinated contribution to OpenStreetMap is through the website I've just linked. The first link I dropped there, which is to a website called HOT's Tasking Manager, which is a way of coordinating volunteer efforts as they contribute towards OpenStreetMap. I would say don't just launch straight into that. It would be good for you to look through the materials that I've also shared that take you through detailed step-by-step how to get contributing, and watch videos to learn how to contribute. But you'll find that you're making meaningful contribution pretty quickly. Otherwise, when you walk around the neighborhood later on, I recommend downloading a mobile phone app like Street Complete to try and add to your local area if there's anything missing there. So it's going to ask simple questions like, does this bus stop have a bench? And you just say yes or no. As soon as you say yes, it's really important information which is saved and uploaded straight to OpenStreetMap. Now, a short time here, so I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but just the organization I work for, it's called Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team, shortened to HOT, and we have hubs across the entire globe in these regions, our focus regions. And these hubs are very much about trying to get close to the OpenStreetMap communities in each of those countries as possible. And so if you've got ideas about maybe setting up a new mapping project or getting in touch with your local community, and you would like maybe a route into that, please feel free to get in touch with me and I can put you in touch with one of our hubs to get you closer to one of those OpenStreetMap communities. Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sam, for that very informative presentation. I'm sure the students have a lot of questions, and it's always great to relearn about OSM and the great work that HOT is doing. So thank you so much for that. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just do a quick overview of one of the projects in which we use OSM data. And then after that, Tim, I'll hand it over to you for the breakout sessions so that we can have a discussion about all the different topics that were discussed. So very briefly, let me share my screen again. We launched a project called My School Today about 2 years ago now. And basically, there are two components to this project. On the one hand, there was a question about, where are schools located, and, why might we need more schools? Because according to the UNESCO policy toolkit, the IIEP policy toolkit, it's recommended for students not to walk over 30 minutes to get to a school. So there was this question about, where are students walking over 30 minutes to get to a school, and can that help determine perhaps where more schools might be needed, more teachers, more facilities, and other kinds of services would be needed in those areas. So what we did is we brought a group of experts together from organizations like UNESCO, ESRI, the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, WorldPop. You'll find more information about all of these different organizations on our website. And we proposed a methodology to develop estimates on walking travel time of school-age populations to schools that are recorded in OpenStreetMap. So right now the project is focused and covers all of Africa. We're hoping very soon that this will be more of a global initiative. But basically, again, I'll share a link in the chat. If you click on the map, you'll see kind of a pop-up, and it'll show you the percentage of students disaggregated by age and sex, and how long it takes them to get to the nearest school that's recorded in OpenStreetMap. So that's kind of one component of it. It helps with kind of narrowing a data gap related to access to education and the broader SDG 4, which is on quality education. And on the other hand, it also gives us an opportunity to engage a lot of local communities, youth networks, students to participate in mapping schools and contributing to the development of this data set. So as I mentioned, the objective was to create kind of a bottom-up approach to collecting data, engaging communities and students in collecting data and contributing to this data set, learning a new skill along the way. Also, it's an opportunity for us to introduce a lot of students to the SDGs, to the significance of geospatial informations and tools and different platforms that can be used to not only map schools, but use that information to understand where healthcare facilities are located. Sam shared a lot of great examples with us. So there's a kind of a skill building component to that, and raising awareness about some of the tools and technologies that students and local community members can use for the betterment of their communities. Basically, just wanted to share kind of a couple of screenshots. So we launched this project with support from the Minister of Education of Ghana. So that's the screenshot from our launch event. Since we launched the project, we've had different webinars with our colleagues from HOT and OSM, with live demos and different examples of how this data can be used across different communities, how different organizations in Africa are using this data. We also have, I've provided a screenshot, we have a lot of different information that can support community members or students who are interested in participating in My School Today. So we do have a step-by-step guide in different languages that kind of walks you through the process of, how you even create, an account with OSM, and then log in, identify the school, and how basically it walks you. I think there are 12 or 13 steps that we have available there. We also have a survey for those who are interested in providing more information about their schools, the name of their school, or, how many teachers they have at their school, or different services that they might have access to internet, things like that. So for those who are interested in collecting that information or sharing that information, we have that option available as well. And then we have other resources like a participation guide that basically provides an introduction to the Sustainable Development Goals and various concepts that are addressed throughout this project. The HOT team also has a great toolkit. So we've added a link to that on our platform as well. And then we've also linked to different stories that were shared by organizations or different groups that participated in My School Today. So we try to also amplify different experiences and different stories related to access to education on our platform as well. So this is just kind of a overview of some of the material that we have on our platform. I forgot to mention, we also have a couple of activities in a story map format for those who want to maybe kind of test out their ArcGIS skills beyond maybe what we covered last week. So if you want to use that data to do some basic analysis or mapping, we do have a few activities available on our platform as well. And I think I'm just going to end with our participant spotlight. So we've had different age groups, different community members participate in My School Today. And we always encourage everyone to share their experience or to share photos of activities that they organize around mapping schools. And so just wanted to highlight that our colleagues from OSM Uganda shared a couple of photos with us where students are using some of the, I think one of the participation guides that we have to learn how to use, learn about the SDGs, but also to use that to map their schools. And then we also have a community member from the Ivory Coast featured here, who basically rode his bike around his neighborhood and mapped a couple of schools that weren't already mapped in OSM. So I know that was a lot of information and a very brief overview of the project. After I'm done, I'll share a couple of links in the chat, but if anyone's interested in getting involved, feel free to reach out to me and we can discuss how we can engage you in this work. You can, as Sam mentioned in his presentation, you can always log into OSM, map your school. You don't necessarily need to reach out to me, but we'd love to learn about your experience and your story and include that as part of the project. So it would be great to hear from you if you're interested in participating. So I will stop there and hand it over to Tim for the breakout sessions, and also we can use that time for any questions or comments that the students might have about any of the various presentations today. Over to you, Tim.
Totally right. Thank you, Miriam. And thank you, Sam. This was really awesome to hear everything that was able to be done with OpenStreetMaps and open source technology in general. So just a quick review on the breakout rooms. This is an opportunity for us to share topics and ideas. You can get to know each other a little bit and debrief on any assignment that you've done in regards to this, or any assignment that you found has been interesting or useful and related to the topics at hand, or just to debrief on any of the presentations that you've had thus far. So I am going to randomly assign groups this time. And I want to just quickly remind everyone to fill out the link to the survey. I can still add your licenses for the ArcMaps, the ArcGIS maps, but it's much easier and better for all of us, I think, if we all coordinate a little bit better with our, I can rather coordinate better your interests, and that way I can help figure out ways that people can work together. So hold on. Let's do this. All right. All right. Is this the right group? Right here? Do we seem to have everyone back? Should be awesome. All right. So once again, I want to say thank you to our guest speakers. Thank you to our amazing supervisors here at SDG Today's and CSD. So two things that I am going to put in the chat. One is the Google form link, which is already up. Please take a look at that. By filling that out and filling out your SDG interest, we can help put people into groups that are filled with common interests and common understandings, and perhaps will allow you to bounce ideas off of people, even if you're not working together. That is one thing. The second thing is that we are going to put, if you put your email in the chat box even, we can also help with the license going out, right? So two ways that we can get you the license is by filling out the Google form here, which is important because as one of my group members mentioned to me, it sometimes is not the same email that you use for your Zoom that you would use for your work or the Google Classroom or the Google form. So I'd like you to pick an email that is most useful to you and most accessible to you. And you can either put it in the chat or you can put it in the Google form. I'd highly recommend using the Google form because if you use the Google form, we can see your interests in SDGs and then match you with those similar interests as well. So thank you. Okay, thank you for putting it. Put all the emails in the chat and I will go through these. Thank you very much.
And Tim, if I can just add on to your announcements, this is slightly separate, but just like looking into next week, more specific to our theme day, we are going to have a climate scientist join from Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which is part of the climate school. So just a reminder to join next week on Tuesday. It will be on climate change specifically. So it will be, I think, of interest and beneficial for many of your interests. Over.
Anything else? I'll stay on and wait for any more of the emails in the chat. So please resend the form. Sure. Here's the link. So that concludes my announcements. So I'm just waiting for everyone to get their emails in the chat, and then I should be able to export the chat log. All right. Has everyone put their email in? Or close to? Yes, Baswad has a question.
Baswar, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
If you are filling out the Google form, I'd recommend signing in with the email that you wish for us to assign the license to, yes. Yeah, and to the point about working with people, thank you for sending the email as well as helpful for you to have the license. That way you can also work with your group members in real time. So even if you're working with somebody, please add your email. That way I can make sure you both have licenses so you both can complete the work or both learn at the same time, I should say. Okay. Thank you. All right. Seems. All right. I think everyone is sent their emails, or at least is close to, and they'll fill out the form, I hope.
And Tim, I'm saving the chat so that you'll have that if you need after the call.
Yes, okay, thank you. All right. Oh, Basra, one more question? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I should be able to see that here. I see we have more responses. Awesome, thank you. There we go. I see you answered the response. Thank you very much, Basra. I see your email there. I will add you. Thank you. Senna, I think you've done the correct form. So, okay. Is there anyone else in the chat who is muted but needs more information? If not, then I'm good. So
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone.
all right. Have a good weekend, everyone.
See you next week.
See you next week.